in your life? How have you guys been this week?
Pretty good.
Good. Wow. A lot of enthusiasm in the crowd today. I hope you've had a fantastic week. It's been beautiful out, except for the last 2 days because it's been kind of cold. But it's just, I hope you had a chance to enjoy the 70-degree weather. Andy, can you turn me down just a little bit? I feel like I'm booming. The 70-degree weather. And it reminded me of my favorite / best Valentine's Day I ever had. Now, if you guys don't know, if you've never been in group with me, every icebreaker that I have comes back to best, favorite, top 5, some sort of list, some sort of best. So you just have to kind of roll with me. And then I know that at the same time, you're kind of thinking, man, Valentine's Day was so 2 weeks ago. Why are we talking about this? Well, let me tell you why. Because this day, this Valentine's Day in particular, was just a momentous day in my life. It was an essential day in my life because it was Felicia and my first Valentine's Day. Felicia's my wife, by the way, for those of you who don't know. And it was our first Valentine's Day together. And up to that point, we'd been dating for about 5 months. We had said, I love you. We'd even batted around the idea of marriage, which is crazy. We've only been dating for like 5 months. But we were throwing that around. But up to that point, we were still very unsure. Like, we didn't know if we were going to make it. Like, that type of unsure. And the reason was, it was all on me. It was my fault because there were just barriers up in my heart. There were walls up. And I started to recognize these barriers and recognize these walls. And as Valentine's Day was approaching, I wanted to break down these barriers. And so I was like, man, I want to do something so special. And I just want this to be the best Valentine's Day. And so, I did what anybody would do when they want to do something special, is I tricked her. So I told her that, I was like, babe, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it out to Valentine's Day. She lives in Evansville, Indiana, which is like 5.5 hours away. I'm like, I've got to work, it's scheduled to work, like, what a bummer. But knowing the whole time that I'd scheduled off and that I was going to come and surprise her. So I drove 5.5 hours. I got this huge bouquet of roses, so excited about that. Then I called her roommate to know where her car was parked on campus. So I went to that spot, and there's I went to her car, and her car was in this parking lot, then there's a street, and then a side street. So I'm on the side street. So I take one flower, and I put it in the door handle, and then I write a note on her windshield saying, there's something special for you back home. Meaning me being special. And so trying to fool her into thinking maybe her roommate put that. And be like, whoa, there's something cool back home. He said something. But anyway, so I have that, and then I'm totally creeping, and I'm 4 cars back. I've got the sun shield, those reflective sun shields. I've got that down, just where there's a little bit, I'm peeking, and so I'm trying to see her reaction. I'm so excited. So she comes, she gets the flower, she's just so confused, what is going on here? So she gets in her car, no reaction at all, gets in her car and drives, and then I'm all right, well I'm going to try to beat her back home, so then I can be at the door, but she beats me back home, and I knock on the door, I've got the bouquet of flowers, and she's like, what? She gasps in surprise, she's like, what the heck, you're a crazy man, what the heck's going on here? And we had this incredible day together. It was a 70-degree Valentine's Day. We walked the campus, I took her to this really nice Italian restaurant, and then to cap the whole day off, we went and climbed. On her campus, there's this very secret building where not a secret building, but kind of a secret thing where you have to walk into a bathroom and climb out of a window, and then you climb up all of this ladder, and you go onto the roof of this building. How cool is that? So at night we're on top of this building on campus, and the moon's right up here, and I said these words. I said, I want this to last forever. And I meant it. And there's just something about the drive to pursue her. That drive to pursue her heart. There's such freedom in that pursuit. There's this idea of just feeling so alive when I was pursuing her. And I think that heart is in all of us. I think we are all pursuing stuff. We're all on this pursuit. And so I think the question that we have to ask is what we're pursuing, is that going to bring us freedom or is that going to bring us slavery? We've been going through this sermon series called Rise, and this is the last week of Rise, and basically where we are pursuing victory in a world of defeat. And so the question is are your pursuits, are they leading you to victory or are they leading you to defeat? So if you want to flip with me to Hosea 1, we're going to be going to the book of Hosea. I've been loving teaching from the Old Testament. If you haven't noticed, I'm loving it. So we're in Hosea 1, and if you don't know the book of Hosea and the story of Hosea, just hold on tight because it's gonna rip your face off. All right, so Hosea 1, verse 2. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, "Go take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord." So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Okay, so let's kind of get the background here. Hosea is a prophet, and then God is looking at Hosea and saying, "Hosea, I want you to marry this adulterous woman." Now, there's two different sides that scholars kind of take. On one side, people say that Gomer was not promiscuous before marriage, but then became promiscuous after marriage. And so Hosea, going into this marriage, basically just knows that he's going to be cheated on. That's one side. Then the other side of scholars, their take is that Gomer actually was promiscuous, most likely a prostitute, and God is asking Hosea to go and marry a prostitute. It's not clear. It's not clear within the text. Both sides kind of have their merits. We just don't know. But what we do know is we do know this character Diblaim. Diblaim is the one to blame for the whole situation. But we don't know if Diblaim is a man or a woman. We don't know if it's the father or the mother. There's some people who say that Diblaim is the father, and that is a male name. There's other people who say that Diblaim is actually a feminine name, and we just don't know. But the word Diblaim means figs, like a cluster of figs. Some people say that actually is describing her mother, that her mother was a prostitute, and that her mother sold herself for a basket of figs. We don't really know, but we do know that the plural means kind of like ill repute, or kind of like this idea of scandal. So we know that, so regardless of kind of the lack of clarity about Gomer and her background, we do know that her background is kind of shady. She comes from some suspect background. There's some things going on. So Hosea, to go and marry her, is kind of a big deal. She doesn't come from a very good home. So let's continue in the story. So we have Hosea, he says yes. He's like, I'm going to marry this girl. He marries her. He's probably on cloud 9. This is crazy. Then they get pregnant. What? We got pregnant. They have a baby. The baby's name is Jezreel. Then we have verse 6. Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call her Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer show love to the house of Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Okay, so this name, Lo Ruhamah, which means not loved, thank you. So we have it basically means unloved, or not loved by her true father. So maybe it's kind of indicating that maybe Hosea is starting to get suspicious. Maybe this daughter of mine actually is not my daughter. All right, let's continue reading, because Gomer gets pregnant again in verse 8. After she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Okay, Lo Ami means not my people, or in essence, not mine. Like Hosea's kind of figured it out. These kids aren't his kids. Like, you have to imagine, like, he's married this woman, he's got 3 kids, but these aren't her kids, these are kids from someone else. And he's like freaking out. And then we move into chapter 2, verse 2. He says, rebuke your mother, rebuke her, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. Let her remove the adulterous look from her face and the unfaithfulness from between her breasts. So he's just like, stop. He's like, Gomer, you can't do this. He's rebuking her. He's like, come on, you can't do this. This isn't right. He's confronting her. He's pleading with her. But then this is what she says in verse 3. She says, then he says, otherwise I will strip her naked and make her as bare as on the day she was born. And he's basically pleading with her, and he's saying, I'm going to remove this support. I'm going to let you be on your own if you don't stop. And then this is what she says in verse 5. She says, I will go after my lovers, who give me my food and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. She's like, I'm going to go after these other guys. I'm going to go after these other lovers. And on top of that, they are going to be the ones who are providing for me. They'll take care of me. But Hosea doesn't give up. He still pursues her. I mean, she's parading these guys in front of him, spitting in his face. But he still keeps pursuing her. Verse 6, therefore I will block her path with thorn bushes. I will wall her in so that she cannot find her way. He's basically like, I'm going to stop her at the door. I'm going to keep her from going out. Like, because this is too painful. Like, come on, stop doing this. But this is what happens in verse 7. She will chase after her lovers, but not catch them. She will look for them, but not find them. Then she will say, I will go back to my husband as at first, for then I was better off than now. So she's still, even after him trying to keep her, from doing this, trying to stop her, she still goes out and she's chasing after these other lovers. She can't really find a stable place. She can't find a place where she can stay. And then she comes back. She's like, all right, well, I'll go back to Hosea. But she doesn't realize that during this entire time that she's been with all these different lovers, that she feels like these different lovers have provided for her and sustained her, she's thinking that that's from the lovers. It's like giving a gift, and they're taking this gift, and they're kind of saying, hey, it's like re-gifting. Like, this gift is actually from us. She realized, this is what he says in 8, she has not acknowledged that I was the one who gave her the grain, the new wine and oil, who lavished on her the silver and gold which they used for Baal. Like, he had been giving her all this stuff. She's thinking it's all these lovers, but it's actually him. This whole time, he's still pursuing her, even though she's in the arms of other people. And she's actually using that provision to go and worship other gods, to be with other people. And then in verse 13, this is where we find her. She burned incense to the Baals. She decked herself with rings and jewelry and went after her lovers, but me she forgot, declares the Lord. We find out that Gomer ends up in this state of slavery. She's a slave. She's been sold as a slave. Some people think that she ended up being a temple prostitute. That's where she's at. So that's kind of the background of the story. So what can we glean from this story? There's a couple things going on here. There's multiple things. The first thing is that this is a literal story between two real people, between Hosea and Gomer, that are going on. The second thing is that this is also the story of God and his people, Israel. But this is a very specific part of Israel. Like, if you remember, there was like the whole nation of Israel, and then that nation broke into two parts. There's a southern part which had 2 tribes called Judah, and then there's a northern part called Israel, which had 10 tribes, up top. And so this is talking very specifically about that northern part. So this is God's pursuit of Israel. But then it's also God's pursuit of us, of humanity. And so this is your first point in your bulletin, is that God chose us. God chose us. That he is pursuing us regardless of our background. In the same way that Hosea is pursuing Gomer regardless of her background, regardless of where she has come from, regardless of what she has done, regardless of who he is. That he isn't choosing her based on her merits. And we see this even within the story of Israel. You know, when we think of Abraham, we're going way back, where God is looking at Abraham and God is saying, Abraham, you're going to end up leading into a nation, a people, and they end up being Israel. Like, we think of Abraham like, man, this Father Abraham, like this great man of faith, like he was a good dude. But we have to think that Abraham was still a sinner. He still messed up. Like, if you read the story of Abraham, he messed up. Like, Abraham did not receive God's love because of his merit, because he deserved it. Abraham received God's blessing and God's love, just because God chose Abraham. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't deserving, he didn't earn it. But just because God chose him, he did nothing to do that. I mean, if we look at ourselves, like, what have we done? Like, Jesus himself in John 15:16 says, you didn't choose me. Like, I chose you. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I loved you first. I pursued you first. We aren't pursuing him first. He is on pursuit of us. He's after us, regardless of where we've come from, regardless of what we've done, regardless of who we are. Even in Ephesians 1, Caleb read it last week, that before the very creation of the world, God chose us. That even before we were even created, God chose us. He knew that we were going to be unfaithful. He knew that we were going to have sin in our lives. He knew that we were going to mess up, but he still is looking at us saying, I choose you. I'm coming after you. I want you. Just this beautiful pursuit. In Deuteronomy 7, God goes farther. He's looking at the people of Israel and he's saying, I chose you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be my people, to be my treasured possession. And God is looking at us and he's saying, I want you to not only be just my people, but you are treasured. You are my treasured possession. So God doesn't want to be just our acquaintance. He doesn't want to be our friend with benefits. Like, God wants to be married to us. Like, he wants to be intimate with us. He wants to be united. He wants to be connected to us. And that's what is really being highlighted in this story. But a question that I get over and over is, how do I know if I've been chosen? You guys ever asked that question before? How do I know if I've ever been chosen? This is a question that this is a question of the ages that I'm not going to touch on, because it's a question for the ages that's been talked about for centuries, and in our own dialogue we've talked about it multiple times. But all I can say is that God has been pursuing you. That God is pursuing you right now. Like, just the fact that you are in this room, right here, right now, in this moment, means that God has been pursuing you and is pursuing you. Like, right now, all of us have an opportunity to say yes. All of us, his proposal is on the table for every single one of us right now to say yes. For every single one of us. But I know that this is difficult, because as human beings, it's difficult to receive love. Is anybody else like me? It's difficult to receive love. I don't know why us as human beings, it's so difficult for us to receive love. But I kind of was thinking of a few reasons of why we can't accept love. Because when we think of this, we think of God's invitation, and we're just like, man, this is too good to be true. This is what's the catch? On Fridays when we do outreaches, that is the number one thing that people say. It's like when we're handing out a hot dog, they're like, so what am I supposed to do? What's the catch? Like, is this laced? Am I supposed to give you money? Like, no, take the money. It's like, no, I'm just giving you a free daggone hot dog because I want to. But that is just our natural reaction of, well, what's the catch? This is too good to be true. These are the 3 reasons that I came up with. And this is your A, B, and C. The first is just fear. Love and receiving love can be blind. It can be scary. It can be unknown. It can be uncertain. There's a certain sense where there's a loss of control. Like you're giving yourself to someone else. There's kind of this trust involved. That you kind of have to trust that this person is going to love you. And there's this trust when there's all these questions, all these what-if questions. Like, what if they leave me? What if they abandon me? Like, what if I give them my entire life and follow them and they mistreat me? Like, what if they end up wrecking my life? What if in the end it isn't worth it? Like all these what-if questions, all this fear. Then the second thing, and I think the reason that we can have fear a lot of times is because of this B, is because of past hurt. We've had bad relationships. We've had relational neglect. We've had people who were supposed to love us, but who didn't. Parents, friends, significant others left us or mistreated us. And we're left with emotional baggage, sometimes physical baggage. And then when, love, this opportunity to be loved comes by, we're just, it's just like, if that's what love is, if this example of what's happened in my life, if that's what love is, then I want nothing to do with this. And I think the third thing, the C, is that we can end up with a false view of ourselves. I think if things happen over and over and you're told things over and over, you just start to believe them. Maybe I'm unlovable. Maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I'm not enough. If this person keeps treating me like garbage, maybe I'm garbage. If this person keeps telling me I'm garbage, then maybe I'm garbage. And that's like almost branded onto us. Like I have a friend who came from this great background. Like she was from one of the richest areas in Ohio. Her parents were white-collar professionals, a doctor and a lawyer. You'd look at her life on the outside and say, she's got it all. Like there's nothing that she's lacking. But she never was loved as a child. Her dad was very harsh and very abrasive and kind of authoritarian. Her mom ended up leaving the family when she was in junior high. And so when it came time, those were her examples of love. So when it came time for her to actually, get into a serious relationship, she had absolutely no idea what the word love meant. No idea. Just didn't compute. It was like a foreign word. Completely foreign to her. She had no idea of what that actually meant, or no idea of how to actually receive it. And here's the thing, guys. I don't know where you're at. I don't know everything that you've gone through. But if we don't get to the bottom of these issues, if we don't get to the bottom of why it's so difficult for us to receive love, and I'm not saying this as like, I know how to receive love. I am right there with you. I'm sitting here, right here, with you guys. I don't know how to receive God's love. I don't know if I even know how to receive my wife's love or my kids' love. If we don't get to the root of these issues, then we're going to miss out. We're going to miss out on true love. And worse off, we might spend our entire lives trying to find love in all the wrong places. It's possible. This is exactly what happened to Gomer. Hosea is looking at her saying like, I'm crazy about you, I love you. She's probably like, I don't know what that means. So she's just running after all these other lovers, not because she's seeking for love because with all these other lovers because she thinks that that's what love is, how she should be treated. She's seeking what is familiar, what's normal, what's safe, what's comfortable. Her normal, her safe, her comfortable, her familiar, when none of that is love. When true love is staring at her right in the face, she has no idea what that actually means. The second point is that I think there's a little bit of Gomer in all of us. I think we've all chosen slavery. I think we've all chosen slavery. In Hosea 4, verse 12, God says, he's talking to the people of Israel, and he says, they consult a wooden idol and are answered by a stick of wood. A spirit of prostitution leads them astray. They are unfaithful to their God. And what was happening during this time is the people of Israel were literally prostituting themselves. There's a literal prostitution happening. There was the worship of all these other gods, and part of that worship was this sexual exchange. But then there also was this spirit of prostitution, this idea that their hearts had abandoned God, that their hearts were cheating on God. We see this even in the very beginning of the nation. We see this in Exodus 32. Now, if you don't like Exodus 32, Moses, he is receiving the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. First commandment, like, there shall not be any gods other than me, like, you should worship me. Like, he's doing that on Mount Sinai. And then the people are like, well, where's Moses? Where's this bozo at? Like, let's go and like craft, let's make a god for ourselves. So they gather all this gold together with their own hands, and it had to be a process because you're melting down gold. So they're melting down all this gold, they gather all this gold, and then they build this golden calf. That's not what a calf looks like, but they are building this calf and this golden calf. And then, this is the crazy thing that they say in this passage, all the way back in Exodus. They say in verse 4, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Can you believe, like, this is crazy. God, like, Moses is receiving the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, and the people are building a God for themselves. And they're looking at this God saying, this is the God that has brought us out of slavery. This is the God that's central to our lives. This is the God that's going to control our lives. This is the God that's going to rule our lives. This is the God that's going to tuck us in at night. This is that God. They had just built it with their own hands. These are people who had seen miracles happen. They had seen God do 10 plagues to the Egyptians. They had seen God part the Red Sea. They had seen God take them out of slavery against one of the strongest nations in the world. They'd seen God rain down manna, birds, and bread from heaven. They'd seen God bring water out of a rock. They had seen God literally lead them a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. This is what they're seeing daily. But yet, they look at this thing that they had just made, a wooden idol, and say, that's my God. That's the thing that did all of this. That's crazy. I think we as Westerners, we can look at that and say, I would never do that. I'm not making golden calves. I'm not making idols. I mean, Felicia and I, when we went to India, in order to go where we worked at, we literally had to walk down a street where they were building idols. Like wood and styrofoam and paint. Just like, oh, well, they're just building an idol. That's what they're made of. That's what they were doing. And we as Westerners can just disassociate with that and say, I'm not like that. I'm not like those Israelites. But I think that our idols could be exposed in our pursuits. I think our idols could be exposed in what drives us, what we think will make us happy, what makes us angry. Let me ask you a few questions. What is your pursuit? Is it a relationship? Is it a career ambition? Is it to be well established or well esteemed? To be comfortable? To be safe? Is it some material possession stuff? Like when you wake up in the morning, what gets your head off of the pillow? What consumes your mind? What consumes your affections? What consumes your attention? What has control over you? What masters over you? Let me put it this way. If a camera followed you around and broadcast all of your actions, what would be exposed by that? What about your thoughts? If all of your thoughts were projected onto this screen, what would they say about you? I think it's possible, probably more than likely, that all of us are running after things other than God. I think it's more than likely that all of us have been running after things other than God. I think we've made these things, these other things, central to our lives. We believe that they are going to provide for us and sustain us and satisfy us. And I think a lot of times we are very much like Gomer. We're like, okay, we're running after all these other things. And then we're like, okay, wait, you have a moment of clarity. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go back to Hosea. I'm going to go back to God. And then you're going back to God and you're doing this God thing for a couple weeks. And then you kind of get drawn back out. You're like, but there's all these other things. And then you're back over here. And then it's like you have a moment of clarity. And you're back. And you're like, all right, I'm with God. And then you're back over here. And it's just this cycle that happens over and over and over. And I think if we're not careful, if we're not cognizant, that type of mentality, we can actually end up being completely desensitized to God's love. We can end up being completely blind to our own idols. And we could completely forget Him altogether, just like Gomer. Like, I can give you stories in my own life where that's happened over and over and over. I can give you examples of people that I've seen throughout the 13 years I've been working with college students. I mean, one example I can think of right off the top of my head is someone where every time that I look at his Facebook profile, he's with someone new. It's like, oh man, like I'm in this relationship, I love this girl, this is great. And then they break up, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go to Jesus now. I'm going to get my God thing together, and I'm going to like really focus on that. And then a couple weeks later, there's a girl that walks by, and he's like, okay, like I'm all about that. Like I'm in love with her. This is good. This is going to be forever. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going back to my God thing. Like we broke up. And then it's like another girl walks by in the gym, and it's like, oh, this is the girl. And then it's just like over and over, and it just ends up going from one girl to the next, 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 to the next. It doesn't have to be a relationship for us. It can be career. It can be, I'm going to graduate, then I'm going to get my master's, then I'm going to get my doctorate. Then they got to create another program because I want to get something beyond my doctorate, a doctorate of the doctorate. Like you just like, it could be a hobby. I'm doing this thing now. Now I'm going to do this thing. Now I'm going to do this thing. Now I'm going to do this thing. And maybe God will be in there somewhere. After I do this thing, then I'll focus on God. And it just ends up in slavery. That's not freedom. That's slavery. That's exactly what slavery wants to do. Slavery wants to rob us of our dignity. It wants to steal away the dreams that God has for us. It wants to make us less than human. And this is exactly what sin does, is it takes away our humanity. And this breaks God's heart. Do you understand that? How much sin breaks God's heart. Like we have to understand that when we are putting these other things central to our lives, We're cheating on him. In essence, we're cheating on him. And this is what the Israelites were doing. They had all these other gods. God was a part of it, but it was just like Gomer saying, like, it's not, there's no monogamy with that. It's like, yeah, God's just one of the guys that I'm like sleeping with, or one of the guys I'm with, and then there's all these other guys, and all these other people. That's what the Israelites were doing. God's not okay with that. He wants monogamy. He wants to be yours. He looks at you as a treasured possession. We're cheating on him. The beautiful thing is that the story doesn't end here. That's just the beautiful part of the Bible. Is it's not like, we're screwed. We've all messed up. It's over. But God, if you don't know, if you haven't read the whole Bible is sharing God's story and his pursuit of all of humanity. And the story of Hosea is just a blip. It's just a small piece, a microcosm of God's macro story. If we continue in the story in Hosea 2:14, the story gets crazy. It's just incredible. Hosea 2:14, therefore I'm now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. Just stop right there for a second. That therefore is almost like because of all of that, because of everything that Gomer had done, because of everything that we had done, in spite of all that, God is going to allure her. What an incredible word. Going to draw her, allure her. I'm going to speak tenderly to her. I'm going to speak tenderly to us, not out of anger, but out of tenderness. Then I will give her back her vineyards, and I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day she came up out of Egypt. So he's going to give back vineyards. There's going to be this abundance. He's going to provide for us. Then he's going to give hope. Then he's going to restore us to the days of our youth where there's this freedom and this innocence. This is crazy. This is unbelievable. Verse 16, in that day declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. He's not this oppressive tyrant like sin. Sin is an oppressive tyrant. He's not trying to master over you. He is trying to be your husband. I know for us dudes, that can be a really weird thing, a really weird concept to think about. But let's just think of God just wants to take care of you. He doesn't want to be an oppressor. He wants to be our husband. He wants to be our lover. Then if we continue in verse 19, I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice and love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. He wants to be married to us. Righteousness, love, compassion, faithful. This is a faithful God. Verse 23, I will plant her for myself in the land. I will show my love to the one I called, not my loved one. I will say to those called, not my people, you are my people. And they will say, you are my God. He is saying, I want you. You are my treasured possession. You are mine. You are my people. Then in chapter 3, this is where we're landing the plane. The Lord said to Hosea, go, show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another and is an adulteress. Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver, and about a homer, and a lethech of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will live with you. God is telling Hosea, keep after her. Keep pursuing her. Hosea is going into the brothel, and he buys her out. 15 shekels. Okay, we got 15 shekels of silver. A homer is about 10 shekels. A lethech is about 5 shekels. That equals 30 shekels of silver. 30 shekels of silver is what you would give to buy someone out of slavery. Also, 30 shekels of silver is what you would give to make a vow to a woman. And lastly, 30 shekels of silver is what Judas gave in order to put Jesus on the cross. That's exactly what Jesus came to do. To buy us out of our slavery. That's the third point. You've been bought by a price. You've been bought by a price. In the verse Hosea 13:14, I'll just read it for you. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. Where, O death, are your plagues? Where, O grave, is your destruction? Then Hosea 6:2, after 2 days he will revive us. On the third day he will restore us, that we may live in his presence. This is exactly what God is doing through Christ. That he is going into our grave. He is going into our brothel. He is going into our gutter. He is going into our temple of false worship. He is going into the worst of us and into death itself to rescue us, to save us, to redeem us. It's like God is knocking on the door and then he's just like, okay, I'm just going to bash this door down. He's just bashed the door down and he's like, come with me. Come on. Will you be mine? The crazy thing is that Christ doesn't retreat from anything. Doesn't retreat from the darkest corners of the earth, and he doesn't retreat from the darkest places of our heart. That's exactly where he wants to go, because he wants to revive that. He wants to heal us and love us freely. The verse, Caleb mentioned it last week in Ephesians 3, just talking about the immeasurable love of Christ. That his love is endless. His love is undying. His love is relentless. He's on this relentless pursuit for your heart, for your life. Do you understand that? Do you realize that? That Jesus is he is the great romantic. That's what he's trying to do. Is he has been pursuing us, and he's trying to draw us into his love. His constant, unconditional love. Will you come with me? He's at the door, his hand out. He's saying, will you trust me? Here, I get it, guys. I get that we're in the brothel. Let's just put ourselves there for a second. We're in the brothel. Jesus is banging on the door. I get that there's fear. I get that there's baggage. I get that there's a lack of trust. I get that there's, daddy issues. There's issues all over the place that we have. I get all of that. But will we say yes? All we have to do is say yes today. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be, just mistakes that are going to happen. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a process. But will we just say yes? And let the rest just come in time. I have two friends who got married and then decided kind of immediately after getting married to go overseas. And before they left, they went and gave each other their wedding present. And sometimes you have it can be very extravagant, it can be kind of temporary, this huge wedding present that spouses give to each other. But for them, they wanted to do something very unorthodox, something very permanent. And so they went, first thing after they did when they got married is they went to a tattoo parlor. And they got this verse tattooed on their arm. Both of them got it. And I wish I would have put it in Sharpie, but it says, I am my lover's, and my lover is mine. Taken from Song of Solomon. I am my lover's, and my lover is mine. It's easy for me to take my ring off. When my hands are sweaty, it's easy. But it's easy for me to take my ring off. But it's a little bit more difficult to take off a tattoo. And for them, they wanted to show that to each other. They wanted to give that to each other because they wanted to look at each other and say, you are my treasured possession. And then the other person say, no, you are my treasured possession. You are mine. You are mine. I'm crazy about you. I'm crazy about you. I love you like you love me. They had to put that on themselves as a declaration of their love and commitment and faithfulness. just to each other, but then even beyond that, they put that on their arm as a declaration and a commitment and of faithfulness to God himself. Looking at God saying, God, you are my treasured possession. And then God receiving that from God, like God saying, no, you are my treasured possession. No, God, you are mine. And then God looking at them saying, no, 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 but you are mine. No, 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 God, but I love you. No, 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 I love you. This tattoo branded, this idea, this reality of their lives, branded into their skin, branded into their life, marked by that. They carry around that tattoo as a badge of honor, not as a badge of shame. The question for us, guys, will you say yes to his proposal? Will you say yes to his pursuit? Like, is Christ your true and first love, or is something else stealing your devotion? So I'm just going to pray for us. I'm going to ask the team to come back up. And we'll sing a couple more songs. And so I'm just going to, there's a lot to think about. And I know I might be a little bit heavy-handed, but I just pray that some of this truth would just marinate. That you just marinate in the truth of this. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, God, I pray that, Lord, I know that I need to be reminded on a daily basis of how much you are pursuing me, because I'm blind. I'm blind to your love. I'm blind to your pursuit. God, I have been blinded by shiny things that I make with my own hands, that I deem as central to my entire life. And God, I have to believe that many of us are doing the same thing. And God, I just want to declare that you are our treasured possession here at New Life, in this room, in our hearts right now. You are our treasured possession. We are yours, and you are ours. God, I pray that our hearts would be given over to you. That you would captivate our attention and captivate our affection. That you would be our obsession. God, may our lives be marked by the pursuit of you and your heart. God, we know that your heart and your love for us is so infinite, and we can just, man, we can swim in that ocean forever, God. And God, we say this to you, God. We love you. We want to be married to you.